Welcome in everyone to the South Carolina American Revolution Sestercentennial meeting of the Q3 grant recipients. We really appreciate everybody being with us today. We are recording, and as I mentioned earlier, I've muted everybody, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. We will have a longer time for questions at the end. I'll be doing a demo for you today of the reports that'll be due, and we'll go over some dates, but it shouldn't take us too long to get through this, and I appreciate everybody's time this morning. So let me share my screen, and I will start my slides here. Make sure we are showing. There we go. So congratulations. That's the first thing we want to say for being one of our recipients. And you have kept your patience through this process, and it's still ongoing. It's doing any kind of state grant. It can be cumbersome, but in the end, we're using the people's money, and it's important that we take care of it and use it to further our state and the causes that we know are important, like honoring the American Revolution and the impact South Carolina had on that process, on that era. So congratulations. If you do not have a grant agreement, you will be notified when it is ready. We're still, I work for a bunch of lawyers. So they are still looking through some of the grant agreements. And those will be, you'll be notified when you have a grant agreement. You do need a state vendor number, and if anybody has any questions about getting a state vendor number and don't have theirs yet, we can talk about that at the end of the session. Um, you'll be receiving 80% of your grant award up front. And I will let you know that most state grants are reimbursement grants. So meaning that you would have to spend all the money up front and then get and have receipts and then get reimbursed. We understood that a lot of the organizations that would be receiving our grants would not have a lot of cash flow. So we were able to negotiate the distribution of 80% of the grant award up front. This means, though, I really need your help. We've got to get all these receipts in and the final paperwork finished. So once you have submitted your final paperwork, submitted all those receipts, 20% will be sent to you to finish out the grant. Now, if that not having that 20% would keep you from doing a project, we can negotiate, and especially if we have some documentation of exactly how that money would be spent. But ideally, we'd like y'all to be able to go ahead and finish the project, finish the paperwork, have all the receipts, turn those in, and then we'll send you that last 20% of your grant. Now, the only exception to this rule, they do allow me for the County 250 organizing grants to go ahead and send the full amount to governmental entities. But again, that's only for the organizing grants. We just thank you. We still need all those receipts and all of those reports at the end of the day. So as we said, we're spending the people's money, so we're going to make the most of it and be as transparent as possible. And we do so by making sure we finish all of our reports. Don't worry about quickly writing all these down. I will send you a follow-up email that will have all of these dates in it. The first is just a status report. Now, this is very important because I need to have something in my file before the end of the fiscal year. Because we have 4 grant cycles, we know that your projects are going to run beyond the end of the fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. But I need to have something in my paperwork in case the auditors come back to us at the end of the fiscal year. So this allows us to have a status report. It could be simply that you've begun your planning, or it doesn't have to be that you've completed a lot. I just need to know what has happened so far. Are you having any stumbling blocks? How can we help you if you need help getting something done to complete your report? And the other thing is, sometimes once you actually get into doing the work, we have found some things had to be extended, or we need to shift a budget around. And we, of course, wouldn't have any additional funds, but we can move one allocation to a different allocation in your budget that is permissible with conversation with us. So we're going to talk today about a contract amendment, which you may find that you need to do. I do need to know in advance of that May 15th date if you're interested in doing a contract amendment, and I'm going to show you how to enter those in the system so that we can get those approved. So the status report is May 15th. The site visit, and I want to really emphasize, a lot of people stress out about the site visit. This is simply another check-in, and this time this is on us as the staff or the commissioners. So this is where we reach out to you. It doesn't necessarily mean we're coming on site. Now, if it is acquisition or construction, we probably would send our site manager out there to visit with you. But if it is an education project, we just may give you a call and just keep us, that just makes sure in the middle of the grant that we think we're on target for our deadlines. We think we don't need any change any of the budget, all that kind of stuff. We can help you with any stumbling blocks. So that is on us to reach out to you to complete that site visit. But sometime between now and November 15th, so probably closer to November 15th, one of us from SC250 will be reaching out to you to complete a quote unquote site visit. Then back to you, the final report that is done by you, and this does need to include financial receipts for everything. So please, 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 if you take away anything from this, save those receipts. The deadline will be February 15th of 2024. And that if you need to go beyond that date, I do need to know in advance of that date that you want to make a contract amendment and extend it. And usually I don't see any reason why most of those would not get approved. They do have to go through an approval process with our executive director, but I don't see any reason why an amendment wouldn't be approved. But I do need to know in advance of that final report date for this quarter's projects. So let's talk about submitting that status report. Reports must be completed within the Discover SC Web Grants program. And as many of you have gone in and signed your contracts, you have seen this same grant components section. So you have your general information under component, you have contracts, and then you have status reports. So this is where you're going to click and complete those status reports, and I'm going to do an example for you in just a moment. Again, save those receipts. And please remember, this does include documentation on matching funds. If you've promised you're going to pay 20% of your total budget is going to be paid by your organization, we need to have documentation that that was actually done. So keep receipts for that as well. Now, if your budget does include administrative overhead, there is a timesheet form that is on our website, and I'll show you that in a moment. Also, travel reimbursement. Some organizations have put that in their grant application, and there's a form for that as well. But we do need to make sure that was documented in your budget if that's something you're wanting to do. And document your deliverables. So not only the receipts of how the money was spent, but did we reach those goals? In your contract, it says the result of this grant is this. And it says, and we're going to, the expected outcome is this, and we are going to measure success this way. And so make sure that you have that information from your contract in front of you as you prioritize getting things done. Those things need to be in your final report. Yes, we have completed a strategic planning report. It has been submitted with next steps. Success was completing our first task on this on this strategic planning meeting. So you need to have some documentation. We love photos. And the state loves to have photos. You can attach photos. You can attach other receipts and other things to this final report. And any way you could document those deliverables, a copy of a report, a spreadsheet with attendees for your events and their demographics of people that you had come to your events. The other thing that is in several of your grants is a request to have a template. So templates are ways that we can take the money that is spent in your area and find out how to duplicate this in other parts of our state. Makes it easier as we share information and share examples of great ways to talk about the American Revolution, get cultural tourism going. So make sure if you do have a template request in your contract, your grant agreement, that you note that, and that you, as you go through the process, you document how you went through about doing your project. And that helps to have that, provides that template so that we can share that with others and maybe duplicate your event or your activity, or your whatever project you're working on. So keep that in mind. And as I mentioned, making changes to the budget and the timeline, those contract amendments is possible. Any budget allocation adjustment over 10% change in the distribution of funds. Now, that doesn't mean we're adding funds to the grant. This just means you're moving from one section to another. You're going to change supplies and make it other category. Those should be cleared by us first. I have not seen one get denied yet, but it does need to be approved prior to the work being done. So SC250 is open to changes, but please talk to us first. Reach out prior to those report deadlines. And you'll fill out those contract amendment requests again in the Discover SC Web Grants program. Right underneath status reports, you have the contract amendments. So a lot of people ask about procurement, and grants do not fall under state procurement. However, we highly encourage you to follow your entity's procurement policy. So a lot of counties already have these, or cities already have these. But if you do not, if your organization does not have a written procurement policy, this might be a good time to write one. And I do have some basics on our website of what the state does. Most of you have grants that don't fall over $10,000. On the state side, if something was more than $10,000, you would have to have 3 responsive bids. If it's over 25, you have to post it in the South Carolina Business Opportunity website. I can help you do that if that is something that you want to do. It doesn't have to be 25. It can be less than that if you want to post it in that website. And it's open to everybody who wants to post that for a government opportunity for them. And it sends alerts to those folks who've signed up to those for those. So it's nice to have some kind of written procurement policy. This is who can approve money, and if at what point do you have to get 3 bids. Those kind of questions need to be answered in your conversation. But again, it does not have to follow state policy, just follow the entity's, your fiscal agent's procurement policy. And again, that final 20%, if your fiscal agent is not a county or city for the County 250 organizing grant, or you have all competitive grants are this way, you only receive that 80% at the front, and then the final 20% will be sent at completion of that final paperwork. And again, if waiting on that funding would keep you from finalizing a project, reach out to us and we can have a conversation about ways that we can guarantee that's with invoices and quotes and things like that. But we do ask that you reach out to us before considering that. All right. And then, as we said earlier, we will have another grant deadline on May 9th. You can clone your grant for another grant. We worked really hard to have the grants be very similar. That's why some sections of the grant don't actually make sense for that grant. But because of that, it helps it clone. So you can have all your attachments transfer in your support documents. You can mainly just end up changing your narrative and your budget if you do want to apply for another grant. So make sure you're copying a grant, not going in and not going in and starting a new application. You're going to copy an application. And keep in mind, this also applies to the PRT grants. They also show up in the same program because it's a PRT contract with this company. So you could potentially clone one of your applications for us and put it with PRT. However, most of the stuff will not be transferring because our forms are not the same. So keep that in mind, but you can look in this same system for recreational trails grants and other undiscovered South Carolina grants will all show up, and those deadlines show up in the Web Grants program. All right. And the last thing I do want to mention, going back to the match that we talked about earlier, if you do have a match requirement in your contract, recently the commission has changed that so that other state funds can be a part of that match, and they allowed me to go ahead and implement that in this quarter. So you are allowed to use, if you have South Carolina Conservation Bank money or from a different program, you can leverage that into your match. In the past, they wanted to make sure it was other funds and not double dipping with the state, but they've loosened that up a little bit just because it helps us get these things done. So keep that in mind. This is all of our contact information. And we'll send you a copy of this and a follow-up email at the end. In just a little while, as soon as I have a recording that I can link to and you can share with your colleagues. But first, I'm going to stop and sharing this, and I'm going to share my screen and go do a demo for you. And before we do that, it may take me a second to close out my PowerPoint. There we go. Does anybody have any questions at this point before I start the demo? You can unmute yourself if you need to. All right. Okay. Very good. Um, so let's talk a little bit. I'll do a demo of filling out these status reports. We have I've signed in as my external user, and you will go to your tab that says grants. Now, I will say doing this on the phone is not recommended. This is not as mobile friendly as I would like it to be. So I do encourage you to do these reports on a laptop or another computer. Desktop or even a tablet, but not mobile. It's not as mobile friendly as I would like. So you go to your grants tab, and then you should be able to scroll down. I'm just going to pick one of my test organization. So here we are in our grant components, general information, contract, and I will say also under general information, we had some questions about additional grantee contacts. So I am not the primary on this, but if I was the primary, because I think my other user was the primary on this, I could add additional folks to this grant. So keep that in mind if you need other people to have access to do these reports. So maybe it's somebody that works for you or another committee member who is going to be doing the report. You can add them under general information if you're the instigator of the primary on the grant in the system. So we saw this is our contract. Everybody saw that. This one's executed. And then here's our status report. Now, when you go in here, you probably will not see anything in here. This is one from a previous demo that I did. And sometimes I'm going to try to get in the near future, try to get these scheduled for you guys so they actually already show up in here. If you do see something down here, just click on it. Anytime that you hover in the system and the line turns green, you can click on it. So if you did see something down here, under status reports, it may be that I've scheduled them for you. But if you don't, you can always just add a status report. Now, there are different types of status report. Semi-annual report, you can do multiple reports if you'd like to. The only one that is required is the May 15th one. So, and then there'll be a final report, and we're in the process of kind of updating our final report a little bit. So I'm just going to do the semi-annual report since that's the one that's due coming up. And what I would do is just name it something like May status report and report dates. So this is the date that you're reporting from. So if your award date was, let's say, on the 14th, and you're going to take it all the way to May 15th. So this is the time period, or if you do it the day before, put it the day before. But this is the time period for which you are reporting. And again, you can do multiple updates if you need to. All right, we're going to save that. So that, just like when we were doing our application, we have multiple things and we want to see them marked as complete. So that's general information. Now let's go fill out our report. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. So how's the scope of work? Are you changing your scope of work? Have you completed some of it? So this one is a phase 2 marker program. So we're going to say that copy for marker has been written, being currently being proofed under peer review, and we'll say quote from marker company has been received. And so you can document that there. And then how did you measure success? Do your deliverables match those described in the application? So once again, look at that application or that contract and make sure all those that you know what your deliverables are. So measuring success is on target to complete marker installation by deadline. And then any successes or challenges in this project that you would like to share. So successes or challenges, maybe it's uh, no hard time. We have had a hard time finding primary sources for this event. So this may challenge you and you want to say legend has, or according to legend, this is the story that was told. So and if you're not able to document something. So that may be one of your challenges. Successes may be community, let's say challenges. And then successes, we're going to say community interest is high. Coverage, or say TV, local TV coverage scheduled for installation. So we're excited about that. All right, so that's kind of all you need. Where are you in the scope of work? Are you on target? Do you have any changes that we need to think about? And then save your form. Now, just like with your application, we have to mark it as complete. So we're going to hit that mark it as complete, and then we have to submit your status report. So you want both of these checked, and then we're going to submit the status report, hit the red button. You can't change anything after the red button is submitted. And just like with your application, I can negotiate the status report and ask you some follow-up questions. So you may have that happen. And just to keep an eye on those emails. I know those ones that come from the system look like junk, but they aren't. So you might want to make sure that you have that in your Outlook contacts for SCPRT grants. Okay. Give me one moment here. Sorry, I had to get a sip of tea. All right, let's talk about contract amendments. So just like with your status reports, we're going to add an amendment, and we want to do a contract extension. All right, and we're going to say need more time for marker installation. Okay. And once again, the general information is complete. Let's fill out the form. And it's one block. It just is where you would say should complete before May 15th, 2024. Need extra time due to production time with company providing the marker. All right. Save it. Mark it as complete. Submit status report. Once you hit the red button, can't make changes, and it's sent off. And then you'll be notified once it's approved by myself and then by Molly, our executive director. Okay. Now it's back to you guys. Questions, concerns, what can I help with? Hey, hey, Catherine, you have a question? You may have to unmute yourself. Yeah. I think you actually muted yourself. Let's see.
Sorry. I'm not used to this WebEx stuff. I know Christina Butler's on the call too. She's our research consultant for our grant. And I'm wondering, we haven't gotten our grant agreement yet. I know it's probably coming soon. Is she able to start her research now, or does she need to wait until that's signed?
Thank you for that question. We are really looking, one of the reasons we have not announced the dates for next fiscal year is that we're really looking at this process. We're learning as we go because it's the first full year we've done this. And we are probably going to stretch out the time before the grant award date to allow plenty of time for these contracts to be reviewed prior to the award date. But because we've had some delay this year after the award date, we are allowing folks, as long as you finally do sign your grant contract, as long as that is officially done, you can, anything that happened after the award letter was sent is eligible to be paid for with the grant funds. Does that make sense?
That's
Catherine,
great news.
Catherine, have you been on here the whole time?
I have.
Oh, I didn't know you were here, so I was screenshotting all the instructions.
I will send you guys
I'm gonna
lots
send
of
it to you anyway,
information.
though.
Yeah.
Heather's going to be, she's going to be, I think she's recording this too. So I think we're in good shape.
Yeah. And I'll send you my PowerPoint.
But that was,
yeah.
Yes, that was my only question. And then we're really excited.
Good.
Okay, I'm glad that you asked that question because like we're doing a reenactment in October. So I was wondering how that would how the contract agreements would be recorded, since a lot of the contracts really wouldn't be paid for until maybe September or October themselves, like say for the hospitality and the
Sure.
horse hay and everything.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fine. As long as the as long as the activity or the purchase has not happened prior to your award date letter. The award letter, when the date on that letter, and if you do finally sign your contract once you get it, I know it's on us to get it to you.
Okay.
But if you do sign that contract, then you can look back at that date on the award letter, and anything after that that's purchased after that or happens after that, any research or whatever that's done after that, can be eligible to be paid for with these grant funds. And you have until February 15th, and then you can ask for an extension, but you have until February 15th to finish using all your funds.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I'm trying to think. I think I had one more question. I know with the contract amendment portion, I did have a question for that because we have actually switched what do you call it, like the catering service. We actually found a cheaper alternative.
Sure.
Because I had originally planned to use the original, but somebody on our committee had found one nearby that was able to provide a better deal. So assuming that we either have the same amount or hopefully greater amount of reenactors who come back, so
Excuse
say,
me.
oh, it's okay. So if we have a smaller amount spent on food than originally anticipated, how could I talk to you about maybe like reallocating that to
Sure.
say another expense, or maybe like would that need to be refunded? I just want to understand before or in case that
Sure.
happens.
Okay, so I'm showing my screen again.
Mhm.
You have your budget here in your grant components,
Yes.
and then you will see they're under categories. So there's personnel, supplies, equipment. So as long as the change from category to category is not more than 10% change, you are okay. If
Okay.
it is more than a 10% change, you've paid less for the food, fantastic. So we're going to move that into marketing. And so we're going to put that money in other expenses for marketing. Um, and it's more than 10% change between categories. Then you just complete one of those contract amendments. There's a budget drop down under what type of amendment you're requesting.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the specifics of what you want to change, and I don't see a problem getting that approved. One of the few things that may be a little tricky is food, as you mentioned, though.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want the majority of the any grant to be food. The state
No,
gets
no.
really really tricky about that. And if you are using, I know like Abbeville, there y'all are using a lot of for food. We try to document that this is in public use, and that it is at least they're you want to document they're not state employees there, that kind of thing. So it has to be the
Yeah.
public is receiving this, this food. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, yeah, just let me know, fill out a contract amendment request, and we can get it approved through Molly. And 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be a problem at all. We just need to document it in the system.
Okay, good, because we
Yeah.
usually do the catering request either like the first like the month before, just so that they have adequate time to prep for
Sure.
that. So I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Good question. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Sure.
Um, this is kind of along the same lines of the previous question relating to budget.
Hmm.
If I, in my experience, when you budget, you try to leave yourself a little factor of safety.
Sure.
You maybe estimate a little, at least a little bit more than what you uh, might expect an item to cost. So, following that logic, when coming to the final 20%,
Yeah.
and cost presumably have been locked down at that point. Let's say that you're fortunate and your final cost may be a little less than what you budgeted. As I'm understanding it, you would go into the grants program and adjust whatever item it is downward in this scenario, um, by whatever amount matches your actual costs. And then I'm assuming what SC250 would do would be to send the final 20% based on the final actual costs. Is that
Well, um, what I'd there are two things I want to say about this. We do not want to spend money frivolously.
Mhm.
However, SC250 does not want your pennies and dimes back. We want to make sure this money is being spent appropriately, but we want to make sure it's being spent in the communities and going back into the communities. So, for example, if you left a little overage in installing your marker, and you have a little money left over at the end of the day, just submit a contract request change, and maybe you're going to say, we got like a $500 left. Let's do some Facebook ads and invite people to the unveiling. Let's think outside the box of how we can promote this, and maybe partner with Holly, and you're going to do something about Revolutionary Rivers because you're right there. Or the guys that was the American Legion that meets there. Maybe there's a partnership event that you have with them, or so think of ways that still is meeting the parameters of the grant, in that it's gonna meet these deliverables, but it's gonna maybe augment it in a different way. I do not want 50 cents back, like I really don't. I don't want to have to track that. But that is,
Well, I hear what
yeah,
you're saying, but in the
yeah,
scenario I'm creating here, there's not money returned. In other words, costs have been locked down, and now we would know what the final cost will be, and that 20% is the cushion through which we
yeah.
finalize the costs. And so in this scenario, by adjusting the budget down in this case, you
If there is
send
no need
less
for it,
you
like I said,
send less than the originally planned 20% amount. In this scenario, the 20% amount might be $200, $300, $400, $500 less than originally anticipated. Therefore, there is no sending back of money.
gotcha.
Is,
Yeah.
is
No,
that
that makes
acceptable?
perfect sense. And absolutely, there's a clause in your grant agreement that you will return money that's not spent, or that you would, so that there is that aspect of it. So absolutely, we could not send you the full 20%, but send you 15% if that's what's left to cover
Okay.
to make the deliverables happen. If that's what y'all want to do, if you don't have something, again, we don't want to spend it frivolously, so it would still need to be something that related to the grant. So publicity or some other way to promote the American Revolution related to that event or that project.
Okay.
So if it's not going to do that, then absolutely just let us know, contract amendment request, and we will just send you 15% back, whatever, for your final payment.
Got it.
Absolutely. It's
Thank you.
what I'm here to listen to you guys on what works for you guys.
Thanks.
Yep. Anybody else? Okay. Well, if you decide you have questions later on, you know how to reach me. So reach out, and I will send a follow-up email. It may take me a minute to get everything loaded to YouTube, so your folks can watch the webinar if they need to. And good luck. Please let us know if you have any challenges or anything that you need help from us. Okay. Keep doing the good work out there, folks. Thank you so much. All
Thank you.
right. Have a good day.
You too.